Okay, I think we're here. The gang's all here. So I am going to call the work session of the Eugene School Board District 4J to order. It is 5:32 on December 15th, 2021. We have 6 board members present by Zoom: Martina, Laurel, Gordon, Maya, Mary, and myself, Judy. And Alicia Hayes will not be present at the work session tonight. We have called this work session to discuss a follow-up meeting after our last week last week when we met with Alma Advisory Consulting Firm for a group for our superintendent search. And then we had a subcommittee meeting with Maya, Mary, myself, and Carrie Delth. And we have a proposal of a timeline and a process for community engagement to present tonight and talk about in this work session. And the preliminary, the dates and the process that we have proposed in the document that you were just emailed has been looked at by Alma, and all of this will work for them. So they've also been in on the process. You know, we needed to fill in actual dates and times. So our goal tonight is to talk through this, and there's an item for action on our agenda to approve the sort of the general timeline and process so that we can start putting the word out for the forums that we're going to do. Did everyone receive the document just shortly before the meeting? You might want to check your email. Laurel's shaking her head. Can you get into your 4J email, Laurel, and pull it off? While you're doing that, there's 2 parts. The first section is about the community engagement and training timeline, and then the second is about the proposed just overall timeline. So let me know when you have that, Laurel, because I don't want to get too far ahead. You good? Lisa, do you know, is this also posted now on Board Book?
I will upload it now.
Is there a reason we just got it?
Before we could send it out, I needed to hear back from Alma to make sure the dates we're proposing, and they just got back to me just a very short while ago. So there was a reason we had a very short, we had to look at calendars and get everyone's input. So I'm sorry about that. And it's now out there. So
could I ask that in the future, if we know things are coming, we just get a heads up, even if you can't set it, you say, please be watching for something that's pertinent to this meeting, because that would be helpful.
Great suggestion. We'll do that. Thank you. Okay. So let's start at the top. So what we did was meet and look at our calendar. We looked at our the timeline we had to get community engagement. We had that initial conversation again in our work session with Alma. So I'm just going to sort of tell you what's here, and you can take it in. So community forums that are open to all. So Alma consultants, at least 2 of them are planning to come out here in January, on January 18th. And so we wanted to have forums that were offered at some different times and different days. So these will be in-person forums. And the first one would be on a Tuesday, the second on a Thursday, and the third on a Saturday. And you can see the times are a little bit staggered from a 7 to 8:30, sort of an after dinner. And then the Thursday one is from 5 to 6:30. And then Saturday was in the afternoon. Then they'll be here, so we thought it made a lot of sense. We, in our doodle poll that we did for our board retreat, every one of us could attend January 19th from 5 till, I think it's 5 to 8:30 or 9. And so Alma was really anxious and thought it would be really helpful to do the training in person while they're here. So we've tentatively scheduled that, the anti-bias in hiring training, and get to meet with them. And then we have, what we did was propose, so while if they come on a Tuesday, depending on when they get here, they will definitely have time during the day, Wednesday and Thursday, to be set up times to meet with students. And they're going to work with the principals, the administrators, and the equity directors to be able to meet with students and figure out the best time and how to make that happen during the day on those days. The other thing is then we wanted them to have time to meet in person with staff. And so I reached out to EEA, MAPS, and OSEA to figure out what would it be like, since Friday the 21st, January 21st is a no student day. Would that be good or not good to meet? So I did get to have a conversation with Sabrina and with Peter. And so she thought it would be good to have the in-person teacher and specialist time 3:30 to 5 on the 21st. And Peter Tromba thought with the administrators, managers and principals, either 9 or 10 o'clock on the 21st. I haven't heard back yet from OSEA, so we'll fit them in whatever works for them. And I also want to remind people, teachers and staff are invited to go to any of these Zoom or other meetings too. We're just going to be holding additional sessions just for them as well. So it's not that that's their only opportunity. Then going to community forums on Zoom, we identified 2 times, January 13th on a Thursday and Tuesday the 25th, again with the idea in the evening, one earlier, one later, to do virtually. And then we are still working on scheduling 2 to 4 additional sessions with invited leaders from groups, more of an invitational time. So I'm going to pause there and say that is the community engagement plan that we had proposed in a very short timeline. We had a really hardworking group, so that was great. Gordon, you have your hand up.
Yeah, this looks great. So I just wanted to make sure I understand that somebody or somebodies from Alma, the plan is for them to be at basically all these things that are scheduled between the 18th and the 22nd.
Yes, that's correct.
Do we know how many people they're sending out?
For sure, 2 of them. And I think the third person might come out at the beginning. So that is the plan.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Martina.
Yeah, this sounds really thorough, and I'm really excited that they'll be able to come in person. I also feel a note of just the last 2 years of the pandemic have taught us nothing if not to stay on our toes. And I think I'm feeling just a little note of concern about where we're going to be just even a month from now in terms of safety. And so this really isn't me saying anything other than we may want to have in the back of our minds some chances to revisit whether or not in person will be possible, whether or not it'll be safe for them to get on a plane and fly from Chicago and elsewhere. So hopefully we won't have to think about those concerns in a month, but we may.
Yeah, thank you for the word of caution. And it also reminds me that we did discuss where these in-person meetings would be. And I think we agreed, Carrie Delph is checking on availability, but we want to do one in the North region, one in the, maybe at North Eugene High School in the cafeteria or auditorium, and then breakout rooms in the school. And maybe at Churchill, maybe at Sheldon. We're looking where the availability. ATA was also mentioned. So we'll try to move it around and make it. Oh, Carrie, you have your camera on. Do you have something?
Yes, I just wanted to add that we're getting settled on locations, but tentatively looking at Arts and Technology Academy, which is centrally located between the South Eugene and Churchill neighborhoods, at possibly Howard Elementary School in the North Eugene region, Cal Young Middle School in the Sheldon region, and possibly the staff forums at Chavez Elementary School, which again is fairly centrally located, seeking to make them accessible to people all around the district and to staff to come to someplace that isn't all the way across town.
Thank you. Okay, so any other questions around the community engagement forum? Our plan is to like post on our website right away once we get an approval, sort of the schedule, so people can think ahead in their calendars. And then hopefully Alma is getting us a link, I hope, to their survey that will also be posted and up on the website, you know, the one that they allow people to do electronically. And then we will be following up with text messages and emails and ways to get to parents and teachers, etc. So. Wow, quite, okay. Oh, good, Laurel.
They seem like very short sessions. So there'll be not a lot of time for engagement with an hour and a half.
It's something I can ask them. That's what they suggested, but we could talk about making some longer depending on the number of people that show up.
Yeah, I guess I want to put out there maybe for discussion, just the idea of after being all pent up for such a long time, people may want to talk a little bit more or have more to say about this, and I think we should be prepared for that. I have noticed that on some other things that I expected to go for an hour, that they go a bit longer because people are just like, another human, let's talk about stuff. So I thought logistically, let's be aware of that we may need more time. I just don't want to miss out on something because of that.
Thank you. That's true. So Martina.
I've definitely also had that experience. And so maybe something that would be convenient in our advertising for these is also to talk about whether or not we add in an end time. Not because we have in our mind indefinite end time, but because you know, I think we all probably know that maybe at 8:30 we won't be finished and could keep going for another 15 minutes. But also I know that with the way that my schedule is these days, if it says 2 hours, I'm like, I don't have time for that. And so sometimes having like a shorter amount of time listed, or even just having a start time, makes me feel like, okay, maybe I could leave at 7:45 when I have to leave, and that wouldn't be rude. So just kind of like flexing around those assumptions and questions that people have about fitting these things into their schedule.
That's really good. It's possible we can say, you know, when we get to that time, say if people have more comments, we're willing to stay, we'll stay, you know, and listen. So Gordon.
I don't know that this is the whole board needs to do this, or whoever ends up working with them, but I thought one of the things that I liked that Alma said was that they had ways of trying to get substantive input out of meetings like that, like separate from how long they are. Just, I don't know what they're going to look like, you know, just have something that's not just, oh, list all the characteristics you want, or talk amongst yourselves in small groups, like, and I think that they have something like that. I mean, that's what it seemed like, but it would be good to hear before then. And it doesn't have to be, maybe it's a subcommittee and not the whole board, but that feels to me even more important than the time, is that what is their process by which something is going to come out that can be synthesized and give us some direction.
Thank you. Yeah, that was one of the questions we asked them, and they're just sending back answers to some of those, like what are the questions you ask? And so we'll share things out to the board as we get things back for sure. Maya.
I think a combination of Gordon and Martina and Laurel's concerns is ideal. I think the idea of giving the start time is obviously crucial so people know when, but maybe being flexible to see how many actually show up, and then incorporating predicted end time into the sharing of the program or whatever they want to call it. But just so that we can be flexible and on the fly with if we need that extra half hour.
Great. Good point. Good suggestion. And the other thing I want to mention is that we plan to have a Spanish speaker at each one of these, so that, because I believe one of the consultants is Spanish speaking, but so that we didn't just narrow it to one option for Spanish speaking people. Mary, go ahead.
Shouldn't we let Alma make a decision about how they want to set these up? I mean, I think that's what we're paying them to do, is to gather this input. And if we start putting times on it and when we need to be done, and it just seems like we're micromanaging something that we've hired them to do. I know it's logical, but that's just the way I am. Sorry.
Well, I think that they have a strong expertise for sure, and that's why we hired them. They did. So in terms of, some people might be wondering, can the board go to all of these or not? And that was a question that we asked, and their advice to us is that we should probably just have no more than 2 board members at each one. First of all, it becomes more of a meeting, but then what they said is their experience is sometimes it changes the dynamic if you have the whole board there, or too many people listening. So we could decide and just have everyone sign up for whichever ones they want to go to. Gordon.
Thanks. I like having a Spanish interpreter at each of these, but and again, I'm happy for the subcommittee to decide this, but I thought that we had talked about having at least one of the meetings be in Spanish, and then with somebody who could translate to English. And that seems like that would be good to have one of them run that way.
Maya?
If Monica is coming after all for the portion that is the anti-bias training, she's the one who's the native Spanish speaker. So we could consider doing that with the Tuesday night one, which she would likely be in town for, and reversing. I really appreciate that point, Gordon. I've been in so many meetings where everyone's like off screen and off in this other world with the translator, and it's definitely very othering. So it's an excellent experience for the English speakers to experience that and to center the Spanish speakers.
Right. Thank you. We will, I think she will be here for that one. I'm hoping. That would be great. Good suggestion. And that's an in-person one, so they wouldn't be off screen. They might be in a separate breakout too. So, or, we can do it however they want to do it. So. Other questions about this? Okay, so now go to page 2 of your document, which says process for search. And this is just sort of a high level or broad timeline. And so today at our board meeting, we want to vote on this high level process with the dates that we have and the idea of the subcommittee. And so let me just walk you through all this, and then we could talk about the different things. So we had decided when we met with them that we wanted to post and advertise the position announcement, that high level position announcement with those 4 areas. And it's going to be a national search, as we had agreed earlier. And so we wanted to get something out there in the world, by the end of this week. Then we tentatively, so then the next sort of big benchmark is that we as a board need to vote on the full position description with the characteristics and the qualifications that we hear from the community that have been collected from us, that we then put together in that robust, what we're looking for in the superintendent. So I am just somehow we can't meet in an executive session, and we can't start reviewing applicants using that criteria until we approve it formally and vote on it as a board. So we do have a board meeting on February 2nd, which is after all of these scheduled community engagement groups. And that we're hoping that we could finalize the characteristics and qualifications at that meeting, vote on it, so then we could move forward. So it may require, I'm just going to say, the only other date that everyone could come to was the January 26th date. So I'm going to just say, let's tentatively hold it, because we're going to need time to, they're going to synthesize all the input for us, but we're going to have to go through it with them and come up with our qualifications and characteristics. So we can find another date in there if we want. I know this delays our retreat possibility, but it's a date in hand. And I think we all want to be present for this conversation. So then the plan on the 2nd would be to approve whatever we come up with for that. And then in February, and you'll see a little bit further down that Alma takes the applications that come in, they vet them, and they make sure that any applications they show to us meet, are qualified and ones that we want to review. But we will then narrow the applicants as a board to the semifinalists, and they recommend, we didn't put an exact number on it because there might be a natural breaking point. And I think, they recommend probably getting it down to 6 if you can is good. But let's say there's a 7th that looks great, we want to keep, or there are only 5, so instead of setting an exact number, that's sort of the ballpark we're thinking of. And then in March, we narrow the semifinalists to finalists, and we as a board do that. Probably up to 3, could be 2 or 3. And then we'll be deciding on our process still, the details of, do we bring people out? How are we gonna, do our final rounds, have community involved, how the community forums. Again, we have that level of detail to still figure out. And then in April, hopefully have a final decision. That's sort of where we are. And if you look down below, we did outline sort of the roles and responsibilities of Alma, of the board as a whole, the subcommittee of the board, and staff roles and responsibilities. So if you take a minute, so Alma's roles include, really their expertise, moving us through the process. They'll be facilitating these groups, providing the training to us, helping us develop that full description, developing a rubric to help us score and review the applicants. And they do the background reference checks for us as well. So they'll be doing that work. And the board, we will be the ones finalizing the position descriptions, reviewing all the applications to get to the semifinalists, interviewing and getting to the finalists, and then, interviewing and selecting the superintendent. And that's the entire board. And then we did talk about a subcommittee, and the subcommittee really is about working with the consultants and together to plan and coordinate the details. So, narrowing things down, having this kind of detailed conversation to present to the board this would be a great example of what we did for this. And just to keep the process on track, keep things moving. And then the last, staff roles, it's going to be mostly Lisa doing logistics of meetings, assisting, Carrie with invitations, posting things, and Carrie is our contact for communications, invitations, logistics, etc. So I'm going to give you a minute to look at that and digest that. That's a lot, but that's sort of the overall big picture timeline and, some of the roles and responsibilities. Laurel.
How many board members? First of all, it seems we're an entire board, but you have on here at least one member who has been through a superintendent process as being
Yeah.
part of the subcommittee, as if that's, I guess that's a wish you want. But I don't know if that's necessary because we all have our, we all know how to do things, so.
Well, this is, as the chair, I can recommend a subcommittee, appoint a subcommittee. And my recommendation is we have a board of 3, we can't have a board of 4. And that it would include, and I had, the group that we had together is the group I was going to put forward and recommend. Mary and Alicia are the 2 board members that have had experience with superintendent searches. It's really valuable input to the process. Alicia's work schedule doesn't allow her to participate, and Mary's willing to put in the time. Maya had volunteered early on, but it could be anyone else from the board for sure, and then as the chair. So I'm recommending that as the committee going forward. Mary's hand is up.
So's Laurel's. Was she first?
Well, I think it was up from her last comment.
Okay, well, this was something I brought up on Monday that I felt like this board subgroup of 3 wouldn't fly, and that I've suggested that all the board review all the applications just for this reason. I think it's important. I see my role on the subgroup as just helping guide the process, given that I've been through it before. Certainly in no way trying to influence the decision or the outcome. But I do believe that we should all agree to invest the time in reviewing all the applications and not let Alma, narrow it down too much for us. This is our most important decision. So that is again why on Monday when Maya and Judy and I met, I said I think the whole board needs to be involved at this point. I see my role here is just more of a screening committee.
Gordon.
Thanks. I like the timeline. I have a couple questions, not about the subcommittee. So one is on the initial cut that where we have Alma doing an initial cut here. Is that to get it down to 10, 15 qualified applicants? Is that really just weeding out people who don't meet the qualifications in some kind of objective way as opposed to using their subjective judgment? Okay, and then that's good. And then my other thing is, I want to make sure that we have input from the 3 employee groups in the going from that group to the semifinalists and from the semifinalists to the finalists. And I'm assuming that this part has to be confidential because candidates' names are not going to be known until we're down to the finalists. And I know when we did the search for the interim superintendent, we talked about this a lot, and I thought I don't remember exactly what it was, but I thought we worked out something where a certain number of leaders of each of the 3 groups looked at the application materials and then spoke with the consultants, like not with the board as a whole. And then the consultants kind of laid out to the board their summary of those conversations. So if there's some, and I think we put that together in a way to preserve confidentiality while allowing input from the employee group. So I don't know if that's the exact right way to do it or if other people remember it differently, but I think it would be good to have something like that in this process.
So Mary, do you remember, you weren't the chair, Anne-Marie was?
Anne-Marie was the chair, but we decided to limit that because of the confidentiality issue and that it was an internal search only. And so it could be fairly obvious who had applied or who hadn't applied. So that was a little bit different situation where we wanted to keep it confidential, but it wasn't to exclude people. It was mainly to protect the confidentiality of the process. That's why we did it, clear and simple.
I think that would be a good question to ask Alma and have her just get their experience from them. I don't know that at this point, we have to decide that to get the timeline. So would that be something you'd like to consider further and ask their opinion about that? Because we'll be seeing them in person in January. Gordon.
Thank you. I guess I just want to make sure that we agree that there's some mechanism. If they have different ideas for the mechanism, that's fine. And I know Mary's correct that there was like a special sensitivity around confidentiality because it was an internal search. But even with an external search, I assume most of these people don't want this to be advertised until they're, until or unless they're a finalist.
Yeah.
So I don't think we need to specify the mechanism now, but I wanted to check that we're in agreement that we want to have there be some way of getting that input.
Right. Maya.
I just want to echo appreciation for what Gordon's saying. It hadn't occurred to me to include that when we had our conversation about that, but it feels like very important information for us. And I likewise leave it to the search firm for their expertise on how to gather that information. But I do think that step where it's the step before we get to the last three, assuming three finalists, is crucial to have input from our three employee groups who have related but also very different understandings of the district functionings and can inform our process in a way that we can't inform it ourselves.
Laurel?
Yeah, I have two things. One is, I guess, with a subcommittee that that you've already chosen, that if there is not unanimous decision, that then it would come to a vote to the board of decision making. If there are choices you have to make and it's not in accord, that it would come to the board to have a decision about it.
Yeah.
And then
Great, go ahead.
go ahead.
Well, I just don't see that group at all being decision-making. We definitely will bring decisions to the board. We're just talking schedule. We had to look at a calendar, clear it with people. There's all this sort of logistic stuff. And so I will say, yes, if there's some discord even about the logistics, we'll bring it to the board. But honestly, it is really not going to be a decision-making subcommittee at all.
Okay, and then some fine tuning about what Mary was talking about with the decision, the cut coming from the board. So many times with interviews, we have to decide, do we want them to come up with 10 to 15 if there's that many finalists, or do we want everybody that meets the mins and look at all of them? Because it's possible it could be a lot more. I don't know if that's true. I've never participated in a superintendent search, so I don't know the amount of people looking for a job right now. But I'm just thinking that we may want to make a decision around that number that we want to give Alma, or we just say, give us everybody who meets the minimum qualifications.
I think we could ask them to do whatever. That's just what they said, and they anticipated getting about that number, but we could make our ones clear to them. Absolutely, Laurel. I had seen Mary's hand as
Well, I just wanted to respond to Laurel's concern, because the work group, and I didn't call it a subcommittee, I call it a work group. We have a specific task, and that's mainly to guide and suggest the process. But exactly what I identified on Monday when we met was I didn't think that the three of us should have that authority to make any cuts in the applicants. I'm guessing we'll get 18 to 15 applicants, and that there's going to be a clear, maybe pile and maybe not pile. And then that's how we proceed as a whole, as a group. And that the three of us who have been tasked with setting up the process don't engage in any decision-making at all.
Is it possible also then to throw in some extra work group dates like early on, so we know this is coming? We're going to have some reading and decision and talking to do, or maybe that's executive session, but to get them on the books as a maybe, because it's coming. We know it's coming, and it helps my schedule.
Thanks, Laurel. I actually would just recommend at this point, everyone save every Wednesday. We only, for now, for sure. And I like that suggestion, because it is hard to schedule at the last minute. I think the review of the applications we'll be doing individually, but Alma will work with us to get a rubric, based on the qualifications and characteristics. I believe that's how they described it. But so we'll ask them about that process. So just make sure we save every Wednesday in the meantime. Any other questions or comments about this process? So Gordon, I will definitely, oh, go ahead, Martina.
Thank you. Apologies. It took me a moment for my brain to remember the question that I had. So question about do we have a description here of finalist interviews? I see narrow to finalists and then final decision. And maybe this is something that we have to talk about later. Maybe this depends on how many finalists there are. Are we thinking that there will be a different structure to finalist interviews, or in-person meetings, community fora, anything like that? And it's, we might not have the answer to that yet.
I'm going to, in the past, and I've been a community member for some of this, the finalists get to meet the community, and we'll hold forums and people can meet with them and weigh in. Or you might do a better job answering this. Go ahead, your hand's up.
I was going to respond to that. When we did the superintendent search 2 times ago, there was a finalist group of probably 12 to 10. And we did the paper review, we being the board, paper reviewed it, and then selected down to 6. And those 6 were brought in for interviews. And then from that, interviews by the whole board. And then from that, there were 3 finalists selected, and they were brought into the community. They had meetings with the different unions, different community groups. This is what we did when we hired Gustavo also. And there was a community forum, and people from the audience asked questions. They met with the unions provided feedback. And then we ended up with 3 finalists, and I would say don't go any lower than 3 finalists. So I hope that answers the question.
Absolutely, thank you.
Laurel.
Oh, come back to me in just a second, please.
Okay. And so I think these are decisions we will have to make as a board. I think when last time we had felt strongly, this is a new board, that we wanted to at least meet the finalists in person. And that was really hard in the middle of COVID. So I'm hoping, I think if someone isn't from this community, or even if they are, if face-to-face would be much preferable, at least for the finalists. And so that's something we can decide. And then, what kind of community forums, how we got input from the employee groups, et cetera, will be important to figure out for sure. Okay, Laurel, you ready?
Yeah, so tell me, part of this timeline, do we get to help with the questions for the interviews? Are we helping with that? Are we going to visit? And also when you said that they're doing the background checks, I know there's been issues in the past where the background checks haven't felt as thorough as people would have wanted. And so I'm wondering, is there a possibility when we get to the final to do a more in-depth background check? So no surprises.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. I think those are good questions to ask Alma about how they do their background checks and how thoroughly. I mean, that's sort of why you get a search firm, but I also agree, I want it to be very thorough. So I think those are really fair questions to ask them. And in terms of the interview questions, they said in their application and in their interview that they provide them to us. I think they would be open to us if we wanted to add or change some. I think they're really open, obviously, to do what we as a board think is important. So they will provide us with questions, and we might give feedback on it or something like that.
And so I guess we would need that in a timely manner so we could actually know.
Yeah.
So, but thank you.
We had asked them, they will send us a link to a survey that will be the online survey they use that everyone can look at. probably I'll get that out soon because we want to post it soon, as soon as they send it. So. Other comments or questions? Your hand's up, Laurel. You might have left it up. I don't know. There we go. Thanks. Well, this could be a record because if we don't have any other questions, I'm going to say that, I was just going to give people a heads up that we had held those 2 dates that we might be taking now. The January 19th was, we did the survey for a mini retreat. And so Martina and I will look at the schedule to see if there's another way to deal with those, or we might be deal with like the review of our goals and our check-in. And I also have reached out to the names of the mediators that we talked about, and I will write up all the notes and send them to people, and you'll have all that information that we can decide what we want to do going forward, how much time we have to commit and what we want to do. But I'll do all that in writing. So. Okay. Then seeing no other questions or comments, we will be Martina will be doing a motion on our timeline and our process tonight so we can move forward. And I will close this work session and give everyone 45 minutes before our meeting starts.